Hello, and this video is for the Timber Lake?
I don't know.
Alright, well, I'll remember the name and I'll post the name when we put the YouTube video up. So, it's all done. We're sitting in here enjoying, relaxing. It's my daughter. And it's all done. So, I'm going to just go over some of the steps and some of the stuffs to watch for. If you guys buy this tree set or swing set or whatever you want to call it. So, anyway, so some of the stuff on the inside here while we're sitting here, got all these posts that come up and they all bolt in on the very bottom to start out. You guys can see them. Okay. One thing is these three posts here, when you first put them in, there's a cross beam that supports the roof. I highly suggest you put that on after you put the posts on because, you know, that step is way into the instructions and those posts are only held in by one bolt on the bottom. And that bolt, you know, if it gets windy and stuff like where we're at, you know, it could bust off and then cause all kinds of problems. So you want to make sure you do that. Okay. On the inside here, on the tower I'm in, you got the circular tower here. This took a good hour and 45 minutes to do. Do not use a rotary or battery-powered screwdriver for this because all it does is strip them out right away. I found that out real quick. And then I'm probably going to have to replace some because some of them are a little loose down here at the bottom and they fall out. So you want to make sure you use the hand screwdriver for that because otherwise that rotary stuff will just strip it right out. So you probably need two people to do some of this bottom piece. I did it by myself. I used a ladder, some blocks to kind of hold it up on one end while I did the other end. My wife and my brother-in-law helped with some of it. At the beginning, the base foundation pieces, you need two people to do. The roof up here, you need two people to do. There's a little bit of a gap in the roof. My wife and brother-in-law did that yesterday. They said they tried messing with it a bunch, trying to get it to close, but it just wouldn't fit in there just perfect. So we can always seal that if we don't want any water getting in. But that is how it is. So then another thing to note, when I was putting together the balcony here, or the side, kind of by the rope bridge, I didn't have the bottom supports down here, down there, a little bit low enough on those wood. So these pieces of wood here kind of stuck up over and that didn't work out. So I had to kind of take those off, move them down a little bit, redo it all. And one thing to note about this swing set is that, you know, once you put something together and take it apart a couple times, since it's wood, the screw holes get a little loose. So you want to try to do it right the first time because all you're doing is causing yourself heartache. So the rope bridge was pretty easy. The, you know, pushing the pieces up of the rubber was a little bit rough, took some time. The slide on the back here. This slide I put together first before anything else because we had a nice 65-degree day and you have to bend the plastic on the top and the bottom. You definitely need two people to do that. My oldest daughter helped with that, had her come outside. She was not happy getting out of bed, but, you know, that's how it goes. You know, the teenagers can't be in bed all day. So we bent that, got it all put together first thing on a nice warm day. Because there was a couple 20-degree days I was out here with gloves. You know, if Santa Claus is going to deliver this for your kids in December, you know, you got to be ready for some of that. So I'm going to go ahead and climb down the ladder here. Again, I weigh about 250 pounds, and this supports me pretty well. I would not go down the slides or anything, or climb up this rock wall. Here, it comes with a lot of extra hardware. My brother-in-law put this rock wall together, and it had some silver screws, a huge bag of them. I didn't see him put this together, but he used these gold screws that were in there. And I still have the entire bag of the silver screws. And I don't know which ones he got this out of, but we put it together and we had enough for everything. So, yeah, so it worked out. I did put all the rebar ground stakes in where they're supposed to go. You know, you have to have a nice level surface. These rebar ground stakes, I used a sledgehammer, kind of turned them out this way, pounded them in, so I kind of had this extra piece here to pound on, and then pounded it, turned it over, drilled these pieces in. One thing I learned when I was doing those is that you'd want to make sure you do that, because I tried to do it close to the wood here. You can see, and the sledgehammer kind of busted up the wood a little bit there and over here. So I learned real quick to turn those kind of sideways so you can get more hit with the sledgehammer, and then kind of pound it back over, flush against the wood, put the screws in there. Another thing to note is that they tell you to put, you know, on these two in ones here, right there and right over there, they tell you to use these gold screws with these longer, not T-nut, I think they're T-nuts, but they don't fit. There's too much room in between here. So I used a couple longer black screws that we had, worked just fine. So no issues. You know, you can adjust this swing set. My kids are 9. You know, it says for age 3 to age 10. You know, they'll probably get a good, they're a little smaller, so they'll get a good 3 years use out of this. Plus you can adjust them, the swings to be higher. The trapeze you can adjust to be higher. One thing while I'm on this side of it to note is that after I put all this together on the bottom, I couldn't get this piece here, this KO6 it says, right? I didn't turn that around like I should have, but it wouldn't fit. It would not fit, and I could not figure it out. But what I figured out is that the factory drilled this hole wrong, okay? Because I thought, since I didn't put this base piece together here, so I thought maybe it was put together wrong, or we had a wrong piece there. But what it was is this hole was probably, what, about an inch and a half off. So I just basically real drilled that hole. That pole straight up and down, everything fit together great. What gave me the clue, I should have noticed it when I was trying to put this together, is that when I put this on there, it was on there first, this pole at the bottom was a little bit angled. And obviously it needs to be straight up and down. So the factory drilled that a little bit wrong. So make sure if you buy this swing set and you're going to put it together yourself, got to be a little bit handy. Got to kind of adjust. You got to have some adjustment drill bits and be able to fix any factory problems they have. But to be honest, that was the only hole in this whole thing that was drilled wrong. That's the only adjustment I had to make in the whole swing set. So that, you know, considering how big it is and how many pieces it is, that's pretty good, pretty good. Another thing that isn't in the instructions, a lot of these boards, when they fit together, there's a little bit of space, right? So if you look on this side, you know, you go over and there's a little bit of space, and I kind of spaced them out. Then you get to the last one and there's a little bit of space. So I could have probably spaced those out a little bit better, kind of moved them over a tiny bit. So there's a tiny bit more space between these ones over here, a little bit less space over here. You know, and up here, it doesn't really matter because it's all drilling into metal. So you only have one choice of where to drill. But on all these other pieces, you know, there's a little bit of gap. Sometimes they don't, you know, they're not made to fit together perfectly snug, okay? So you kind of gap them out a little bit. This piece here, with that little weird piece there, was one of the biggest nightmares, okay? They have it where you measure it and you connect this piece here to that little weird piece. I think it's G something. If you drill that in beforehand and then try to maneuver it to get in there and back and forth, and then you put it in there on the metal circular piece that goes around, you just can't get it to fit. It's a nightmare. So what I ended up doing is I basically bolted this bottom piece on, and then bolted that top piece on, and then there's 2 screws on the back side, and it gives you about 1.5 inch clearance, is why they want you to, you know, drill those 2 screws in first. You know, because you don't have any room to actually drill them in. But I have one of those sideways screwdrivers. It's like an L, and I just use that to screw it in after the fact. So that saved me a lot of heartache on that piece. So if you're going to buy this and put it together, just a tip. Another thing is, on this big slide, there's a piece of wood that goes here. On the instructions, I didn't know if maybe this bolted on, over the wood piece or through it, but I figured out it bolts through it. So another thing that I wish someone would have done a video, kind of told me a little bit more, because the instructions didn't tell me a ton. Okay, rope bridge, pretty easy. These splinter guards, they don't really, they go on however you want them to go on. So that was the easy part. This piece I assembled all in the garage and then brought out here separately. So that wasn't too bad. But anyway, so it's all done. Kids' Santa Claus presents done. One thing I do wish I would have done before I started this, because once you start building this top piece, it's way too heavy to move. So I wish I would have put some weed block down, because now I'm going to put a bunch of mulch, and I'll have to just use weed killer to keep the weeds down since there's no weed block. So anyway, make sure in the instructions when it says black screws, it'll say BLK. Make sure you use black. If it doesn't say black, it means to use the gold screws or the gold hardware, like this. Okay, so you want to make sure you use the gold hardware. When my brother-in-law was putting the rock wall, because that's one of the first pieces together, he used the black pounding nuts on the back, and you're supposed to use the gold on it. I just used the gold nuts to finish up some of the other pieces where it requires black. So it's just a color thing and a way that it looks. So it's no huge deal. Just, in the future, if you guys are putting this together, you want to make sure you pay attention to that. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful. My kids are going to love this swing set. If you can see, we own about 37 acres here. Our backyard's pretty big. My father-in-law came over and leveled this land for us. You can see it's pretty sloped. So luckily for me, he has a nice big bobcat to level out the ground. So you need a pretty big area. We measured this, and this is the safety zone. So with all the measurements and the safety zone they require, we basically made this as big as you're supposed to have it. So if you have a small backyard, probably not something you want to purchase. One other thing to note is, between me, my wife, my brother-in-law putting this thing together, a lot of times I was doing it by myself. A lot of it you can do by yourself. But it took us about 40 to 45 hours straight to put this together. So I think they wanted about $1,000 or $1,200, something like that, to come out here and put it together. I wasn't willing to pay that. If you're not handy and you don't have the time to do something like this, because it comes in 6 pallets of flat wood, so nothing's really pre-assembled except for maybe the floor, or not the floor, the roof boards and the boards over the crow's nest up there. They're pre-assembled, but everything else is not pre-assembled. You have to do everything manually yourself and try to figure out which piece goes where. No pieces that go together in the same box. Sometimes they are. Sometimes you have a bunch of floorboards in the same box. But for the most part, when you're doing a step, you're going to find one board in one box, one board in another box, and the last board in another box. So it's not laid out in a manner that it makes it extremely simple for the novice person to put together. It is possible. Just be prepared for a lot of work, because it was a lot of work. So anyway, I hope this video helped anyone that's planning on buying this swing set. I would recommend it. It's high quality. It's very sturdy once it's put together. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun for my kids. One other thing, I weigh about 250 pounds. So when I was up there by myself, when it was just this square base assembly here, it was a little scary going out onto the edges and thinking maybe it'd tip over and stuff. It never did. But what I did is I took a couple of these landscape bricks that probably weigh about 50 pounds a piece. I kind of set them on the base here just to give some extra weight in case, it started to tip or I was out on the edge or something like that. So anyway, I hope you like this video, and you guys have a great day. Take care.